Imagine this. If you don't perform a self-check on your completed design work before showing it to your boss or client, and then have to redo it due to errors, wouldn't it be more professional to review it yourself and make corrections in advance? During the design process of a product prototype, there's a UX design checklist that can greatly assist you. It helps ensure the integrity of your design work. This checklist should include industry best practices, recognized guidelines, and your own learnings from previous projects. By formalizing this process, you can make your designs more comprehensive and accurate. Typically, the checklist covers the following areas. By systematically reviewing your design against these criteria, you can identify any potential issues and make necessary improvements. This not only enhances the professionalism of your work but also ensures that your design aligns with user needs and business goals. I'll explain these 10 areas one by one below. Task flows. During prototype design, it is important to check if the operational flow of each function possesses the following characteristics. Smoothness. The flow should be uninterrupted and free from loops or dead ends. Reversibility. The flow should be reversible, allowing users to undo or reset actions and providing multiple exit points. Continuity. Complex flows should support saving progress, with prompts to save in case of unexpected interruptions or exits. Timeliness. There should be time limits for certain actions, and operations that exceed the time limit should be expired. Fault tolerance. Flows should have error handling mechanisms, such as prompting for password requirements or automatically filtering out spaces and special characters. Structure and layout. This area primarily focuses on the navigation and content of the design. When designing the navigation, it is important to consider if it is easily accessible, user-friendly, scalable, and logically organized. For the content area, you need to consider the types of content present, whether there are any special content types, how to highlight important content, and if frequently used functions are easily accessible to users, such as being placed within reach on the first screen. You should also consider if content needs to be categorized or merged, if it is appropriate for the content to appear on the current page, if it can be collapsed or hidden, and if longer content needs to be paginated. Page interactions. This area primarily focuses on loading, refreshing, and transitioning within the pages. When it comes to page transitions, you should check if there are any specific requirements for the transition and if there are quick ways to switch or exit. For loading, you need to consider if there should be a loading animation, if there is any preloaded content, if there are failure prompts in case of loading failures, and how to handle reloading. When it comes to refreshing, you should consider if it is automatic or manual, if it is triggered by pulling down or clicking a button, how much content is refreshed each time, if users are notified about the number of refreshed items, if there are emotionally engaging animations for the refresh process, if page refresh is necessary when transitioning between pages, and if there are result prompts for the refresh, including success and failure notifications. Page elements. Page elements can be categorized into text, lists, and images. For text elements, consistency. The wording used for different content within the same page should be consistent, and formats such as time, location, currency, and punctuation should be unified. Clarity. Text should be expressed in a more understandable and accessible manner. Conciseness. Text can be more concise and to the point. Emotional appeal. Text can incorporate emotional expressions, such as personal pronouns, honorifics, and tone, to align with user scenarios and guide user actions. For list elements. Layout. Consider whether to load all items on one page or use pagination. If using pagination, determine the number of items per page and consider including a progress indicator. Interactions. Consider whether to support sorting options, manual sorting, default sorting, and displaying sorting rules. For image elements. Viewing. Consider if there are special ways to open images, example, zooming or pop-up, if there are preloaded images, how to handle image loading failures, if users can view images in full size or original resolution, and if there are gestures for zooming and saving images. Also, consider if there are image descriptions, character limits for descriptions, and prompts for exceeding the limit. Interactions. Consider if images can be sent, edited, or deleted. Controls. This mainly includes common buttons, tab bars, pop-ups, input fields, radio buttons, checkboxes, and forms. When it comes to buttons, it's important to consider the appropriate use of primary buttons, secondary buttons, ghost buttons, and text buttons. Pay attention to the accessibility of button placement, its hierarchy, and consistent positioning. Ensure that button copy is precise, and consider distinguishing button states. Evaluate if the button's animation and feedback align with user expectations, and select appropriate feedback intensity, such as using a strong prompt for pop-ups, a medium prompt for toasts, and a weak prompt for tips. Additionally, pay attention to providing feedback on operation results, such as success, failure, no data, and no permission, as well as the visual and status changes of related elements before and after the operation. Tab bars can be self-checked in terms of information and operations. For information, consider default options and maximum quantities. For operations, evaluate if left and right swiping and sliding effects are supported, if menus can be accessed for viewing, if there are special effects when accessing menus, and if custom sorting and recommended combinations are supported. Self-check points for pop-ups include the following. Visual, check if special visual effects are needed, such as for promotional or event-related pop-ups. Prompts, verify if important and sensitive operations have secondary confirmation. Mask, confirm if clicking on the mask can close the pop-up. Interaction, check if primary actions are highlighted and if cancellation is possible. System, assess if differentiation is needed for different operating systems. For input fields, pay attention to the following. Text types, consider the allowed characters, such as letters, numbers, spaces, and special characters. Text length, ensure that the text length meets the requirements, for example, a phone number must be 11 digits. Input methods, evaluate if input should be done on the current page or through page switching, if pasting is supported, if line breaks are allowed, if input content should be hidden, and if voice input is supported. Prompts, confirm if there are default values and pre-filled values, as well as prompts and guidance for invalid input. When it comes to radio buttons and checkboxes, consider their types and operations. In terms of types, not only should you choose the appropriate button type based on the specific scenario, such as menu selection or tag selection, but also consider if clearing selections is supported and if there are any linked selections. For form validation, focus on the flow, layout, titles, and error handling. In terms of flow, check if the form design aligns with the actual process, if the layout of the form list is reasonable, if there's proper alignment between titles and content, if error styles are clear and have methods to dismiss error prompts, if errors can be located, the intensity of prompts used, if there are limitations on the number of error prompts, and what further actions are taken after exceeding the limit. Accessibility. It is important to consider various aspects to ensure that your design is inclusive and usable for all users. Here are some key points to review. Text alternatives. Check if all non-text elements, such as images, icons, and multimedia, have appropriate alternative text descriptions to convey their meaning to users who cannot see them. Color contrast. Evaluate the color contrast between text and background elements to ensure readability for users with visual impairments. Use tools or guidelines, such as the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines WCAG, to verify if the contrast ratio meets the recommended standards. Keyboard accessibility. Test if all interactive elements, such as buttons, links, and form fields, can be easily accessed and operated using only a keyboard. Ensure that users can navigate through the interface and perform actions without relying on a mouse or touch input. Focus indication. Verify that there is a clear visual indication of focus when navigating through interactive elements using the keyboard. This helps users understand their current location and improves the overall usability of the interface. Readability and text formatting. Assess the readability of the content by considering factors such as font size, line spacing, and text formatting. Ensure that the text is legible and adjustable to accommodate users with different visual abilities. Screen reader compatibility. test the compatibility of your design with screen readers to ensure that users relying on assistive technologies can access and understand the content effectively. Pay attention to the order of elements, proper labeling, and semantic structure. Error handling. Evaluate how errors and validation messages are presented to users. Ensure that error messages are clearly visible, descriptive, and provide guidance on how to correct the issue. Cross-platform adaptability. It is important to ensure that your design works seamlessly across different devices and platforms. Here are some key points to review. Responsive layout. Test if your design layout adjusts and adapts smoothly to different screen sizes and resolutions. Ensure that the content remains readable and accessible on various devices, including desktops, tablets, and mobile phones. Interaction consistency. Verify that the interaction patterns and gestures used in your design are consistent across different platforms. Users should be able to perform similar actions and navigate through the interface with ease, regardless of the device they are using. Performance optimization. Evaluate the performance of your design on different platforms to ensure smooth and efficient user experiences. Consider factors such as loading speed, resource usage, and responsiveness to user interactions. Platform-specific guidelines. Familiarize yourself with the design guidelines and best practices for each target platform. Platforms like iOS and Android have specific design patterns and conventions that should be followed to provide a native and familiar experience to users. Content adaptation. Review how your design handles different types of content, such as images, videos, and text, across various platforms. Ensure that the content is appropriately scaled, optimized, and displayed to maintain its quality and readability. Accessibility. Apply accessibility principles to ensure that your design is inclusive and usable for users with disabilities across different platforms. Consider factors such as keyboard navigation, screen reader compatibility, and color contrast to provide equal access to all users. Testing on multiple devices. Test your design on a variety of devices and platforms to identify any inconsistencies or issues that may arise. This will help you uncover platform-specific challenges and make necessary adjustments to improve the overall user experience. Visual design. It is important to ensure that your design is visually appealing, consistent, and aligned with your brand identity. Here are some key points to review. Consistency. Evaluate the consistency of visual elements such as colors, typography, icons, and spacing throughout your design. Ensure that these elements are used consistently across different screens and components. Hierarchy and readability. Assess the hierarchy of information and the readability of text within your design. Make sure that important elements are visually emphasized, and that text is legible and easy to read, considering factors such as font size, line spacing, and contrast. Alignment and proportions. Check if elements are properly aligned and proportioned within your design. Pay attention to the spacing between elements, the alignment of text and images, and the overall balance of the composition. Visual feedback. Verify that your design provides clear visual feedback to users when they interact with different elements. This includes highlighting selected items, indicating hover states, and providing visual cues for actions such as button clicks or form submissions. Brand consistency. Ensure that your design aligns with your brand identity and guidelines. Use appropriate colors, typography, and visual elements that reflect your brand's personality and values. Imagery and graphics. Evaluate the quality and appropriateness of imagery and graphics used in your design. Make sure they are relevant, high resolution, and enhance the overall user experience. White space. Consider the use of white space or negative space within your design. White space helps create visual breathing room, improves readability, and enhances the overall aesthetics of your design. Accessibility. Apply accessibility principles to your visual design to ensure inclusivity. Consider factors such as color contrast, font size, and alternative text for images to make your design accessible to users with different abilities. Performance and loading speed. It is crucial to consider the performance and loading speed of your design. Here are some key points to review. Optimized assets. Ensure that images, videos, and other media assets are properly optimized for web or mobile use. Compress images, reduce file sizes, and use appropriate formats to minimize loading times. Caching and compression. Implement caching mechanisms and compression techniques to reduce the amount of data that needs to be loaded on subsequent visits or interactions with your design. Minimize HTTP requests. Minimize the number of HTTP requests by combining CSS and JavaScript files, using CSS sprites, and reducing the number of external resources. Code efficiency. Review your code to ensure that it is clean, efficient, and follows best practices. Optimize JavaScript and CSS code, remove unnecessary code, and eliminate render blocking resources. Performance testing. Conduct performance testing to measure the loading speed and responsiveness of your design. Use tools such as Lighthouse or Page Speed Insights to identify areas for improvement. Mobile optimization. Optimize your design for mobile devices by using responsive design techniques, optimizing images for mobile screens, and ensuring that touch interactions are smooth and responsive. Server response time. Evaluate the server response time and ensure that it is within acceptable limits. Optimize server-side code and database queries to minimize response times. Continuous monitoring. Regularly monitor the performance of your design and make necessary optimizations as needed. Keep track of loading speed, user feedback, and any performance-related issues that arise. Special scenarios. Special scenarios require considering the physical conditions, special modes, network status, and account permissions for specific functional scenarios. Physical conditions include hardware devices such as support for screen orientation changes and ensuring complete functionality during transitions, and operating systems whether to differentiate between Android and iOS, for example. It also involves determining the need for permissions to access devices like Bluetooth, GPS, and camera, and finding ways to encourage users to grant those permissions. Special modes encompass the following types. Night mode. Check if there is a night mode and the implementation of its switching mechanism. Wi-Fi mode. Verify if automatic downloads and caching are enabled. Immersive mode. Assess the convenience of exiting full screen mode and the impact of weak interruptions on information display. Data usage mode. Determine if there are prompts for data consumption or the option to switch to Wi-Fi mode. Low battery mode. Evaluate whether certain visual effects are reduced and silent downloads are disabled. Network status primarily includes normal, no network, weak network, and disconnected network states. It is important to consider solutions for scenarios with no network, weak network, or disconnected network, as well as provide appropriate prompts during network state transitions. Account permissions should account for the differences between logged in and logged out states. When users in a logged out state attempt to access features that require a logged in state, consider whether to prompt them to log in. Additionally, when users attempt to access features for which they do not have permission, provide empathetic prompts indicating the lack of permission and guide them on how to obtain the necessary permissions. By conducting a systematic review of your design against these criteria, you can effectively identify any potential issues and make the necessary improvements. This not only enhances the professionalism of your work but also ensures that your design aligns with the needs of your users and the goals of your business. If you like my video, please like it, share it with others, or subscribe to my channel.